Welcome to Researcher 135's Community Call, Daily Talk, with host Rich Vernadeau. Daily Talk, Researcher 135's Community Call. Daily Talk is a weekly call-in talk show which airs on www.talkshow.com every Saturday night at 7 p.m. Central Time, 8 Eastern, and 5 Pacific.
Because she had been missing for all that long a period of time, but the family had never reported her missing because they weren't close. And I always thought that was so odd and so chilling that you wouldn't even report your sister missing for so many years.
Wow. We have another caller from Northeast Texas on the line here. Hello Northeast Texas.
Hello.
How are you this evening? Yes.
I'm doing good.
Great. Well, tell us.
I'm calling about serial killer David Wain McCall that was here in Paris, Texas. I knew him between 1984 and 1987. And at the time, I was only 16 years old. And one of the guys that we both hung around told me that he had raped a woman in Indiana. Now, all of this can be Googled now. But at that time, the only thing he had done that anybody knew about was rape. Quite a few years later, I would find out that they got him on 6 hits. He'd killed 6 women, possibly more, because he had a job where he traveled. But it was 6 hits in and around Dallas.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I smoked pot with this guy. I slept in the same room one time with this guy. And even though I was afraid of him and didn't know why. And, some people, some of the guys would rib me about that because, we were teenagers, so they did. There was no reason that anybody knew of to fear him. So I think it's very interesting that at 16 I picked up on something, even though I didn't know what. But I think that's very interesting that I knew someone who was going to become a serial killer.
Yeah.
And he started out with
That's scary.
And it was David Wade McCall, and you can Google information about him.
Yes.
It's horrifying to look back and realize that you were that close to someone like that.
Yes.
Well, what about Ann Rule? She actually worked with what's his face?
Oh, Ted Bundy. You're correct. Ann Rule worked right next to Ted Bundy.
Yeah. I think they were in some kind of a crisis call center or something.
Yeah, they were. Suicide crisis call. She later went on to write the book, The Stranger Beside Me, about Ted Bundy.
Yeah. Excellent book. Excellent book.
Henry, tell us.
Go
ahead. Tell us a little about. Yes, go ahead.
Ann Rule's one of the great crime writers.
Yes, she is. She's written a number of nonfiction true crime books. Deb Gala, you've had some experience in the criminal justice system. Tell us a little about that.
Well, actually, I just studied. I wanted to go on to become a probation officer, but I just ran out of money, so I only, received my associate's degree. Mm-hmm. But during that time, it was a very intense course. We learned photography back when, you didn't have digital cameras, and how to process fingerprints. And we had to do a lot of research. And it was during that time that I became a staunch advocate against the death penalty. And there's a reason for this. Up until that time, I figured, hey, let him die. However, when I was doing research, and this was like 1988, I read up on how they had found 300, and I forget, so many people that they thought were guilty and later found out after their death they were innocent. And that made me think. I thought, even if one person, is in put to death for something they didn't do. You know, it's just wrong. And even though my next door neighbor was murdered, and I woke up to her screaming being murdered, you know, even that at that time, we knew he did it, but all I wanted was for him to be in prison the rest of his life. I thought, make him be as miserable as he made, you know, everybody else. And since then, you know, they've come out with the Innocent Project and a lot of things where DNA has exonerated a lot of people that had been in prison for years, some on death row, and never thought they'd see the outside of the prison again. And here they had, you know, were not even guilty.
Deborah, have you ever heard of Randy Steidl?
No. Now, where was he? I was just looking up the serial killer we had in our area. Go ahead.
Well, Randy Steidl was someone that I met when I was very young. I was only about 18, and I dated him for a while. Several years later, he and another man, this is in a town, it's also called Paris, Illinois. He and another man were arrested for the murder of a young couple, Karen, and I can't remember the other man's name. It may have been Randy Rhodes. The bodies had been, I believe, strangled, stabbed, and the house was burnt down. Well, eventually Steidl and the other man, I can't think of his name, they ended up on death row. And 19 years later, Steidl was exonerated and found that he had been railroaded by the Paris police and the state's attorney. So he had spent all that time.
He's not the man that originally came from Ohio, is he?
No, I believe Steidl grew up as far as I know, he grew up in Paris, Illinois.
Okay, the reason I was asking, because there was another case in Texas. I read the book so long ago, I can't remember. I want to see The Thin Blue Line, but I may be wrong. But the man had come from Ohio down to Texas to work, and he had picked up a hitchhiker. And he let the hitchhiker stay overnight with him, and I don't know, took him somewhere, and they found two bodies. The hitchhiker blamed it on him, and they let the hitchhiker off, stating that, well, you know, he's state witness and all this. Years later, this man was on death row and had received reprieves. That's the only reason he was still alive. But years later, they somehow linked or figured out that he wasn't the one that committed the murders. But they didn't go after the hitchhiker. He had killed other people since they prosecuted him for that, but not for, you know, this man. I read that book, I want to say in 1995, and I was just very upset about it because I thought, you know, what kind of justice system is this if the perpetrator goes free and somebody else?
Yeah, and of course, now it's coming out all over the news that all these attorneys, police, prosecutors, and everything are fabricating evidence, and they're lying. And this apparently is going back, they say, for decades, and it's all over the country. And
there's something called the Innocence Project.
Yeah, and also something to do with the DNA. Some of the labs had mishandled DNA for decades. And, you know, that's just really, really scary when you stop and think about it.
Oh, yeah, because they would pick up stuff. Evidence, and put it all together, so you're getting DNA on items that otherwise wouldn't have had it, you know, and it just messes the whole case up.
Yeah. And that's basically what happened to Steidl.
Yeah, well, like I said, I'd read that other one. I just looked up that murderer I was telling you about earlier. Okay, it says on here, in a Lucas County Common Police Court on October 2nd, and this was, just a minute, let me see the year exactly. Oh, it says 2015, but it was in 2006. I didn't think it was that long ago. Okay, anyways, it says, in a tense Lucas County Common Police Court on October 2nd, Toledo long-haul trucker Delmas Colvin admitted to strangling and suffocating 5 prostitutes and dumping their bodies in remote areas in and around the city.
Yeah.
And at that time, they had links to him murdering a 7th prostitute. So, you know, on it goes.
Absolutely. there have been a number of people on the death row in a number of states that have been exonerated by DNA evidence at some point.
Right. And that Barry Bonds case, that was in Montana. Are you familiar with that? The one where these people all said that he had been in trouble when he was younger, and this girl, I think she was a valedictorian or something. Anyways, they lured her out to an area, and they admitted that they got into a fight, but then they said that Barry Bonds did it. And people have come forward to say, no, that's not what happened. The women that got away with it, they were kind of girls then, but the ones that got away with it would brag about how they'd murdered once and got away with it. They let Barry Bonds out for like a year, and then they decided, no, we're going to just put him back in here, and they found him guilty, and he's, has this life sentence, and I had been connected to that link. And one of the reasons being is, okay, is there DNA that can exonerate him? I don't know that he's innocent, but, when you have so many people come forward to state other facts, it just makes you wonder. Yeah. And the prosecutor at that time was running for some kind of office, so he wanted to, that's another thing. It becomes political. They want to make a name for themselves.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's happened, ever since there's been, police forces and FBI and prosecutors and the whole bit. I mean, they're the ones that are in position to fabricate evidence if they want to.
Right.
I'm really surprised that Scotland Yard didn't hang the Jack the Ripper murders on some poor soul.
Well, they tried. They tried.
Absolutely.
Somebody said they discovered who. Somebody said there's new evidence that it was a policeman that did those murders. Anybody?
But there's all kinds of theories.
Patricia Cornwell has an excellent book out.
I heard it was a prominent doctor. I heard it was a prominent doctor.
I did too.
Because he had knowledge of the anatomy, he was taking their uterus out and wrapping it around them.
Yeah.
Only a doctor at that time would have known how to do that.
Right. It's like that Black Dahlia that's never been, they've never solved that, although there's been a lot of theories.
Uh-huh.
They thought that might have been a doctor, too.
They think it was the famous torso killer. I can't remember what area he was killing in, but he was out of his normal area. But the crime was basically the same. And they called him the torso killer. They never found him. And because what happened to the Black Dahlia was so close to what happened to the other victims, they think that that's who it was.
It's a good possibility there. Another long unsolved one, the Zodiac Killer out in California, too, who claimed a number of victims.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
they've got more than one that they call the Zodiac Killer.
Say what you want about the Zodiac Killer. He did have a sense of humor.
Oh, those strange letters that he would send to the newspapers?
Right.
What about that BTK killer?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, BTK.
Yeah.
Right.
Went undetected for 20 years, didn't he, or longer? Mm-hmm.
It makes you wonder, how many serial killers are actually roaming the country at any given time. Are there 20 or 30 of them, or, are there over 100?
According to John, the guy that instituted the FBI Profiler program.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I know who you're talking about. I can't think of his last name.
Back in the 80s, he said that at that time there were over 100 serial killers. He estimated that there were over 100 serial killers operating in America.
Man.
See, they get smarter. They get smarter at hiding the bodies and planning false trails and all that. as the years pass. The police get smarter, but the killers get smarter.